he's entirely unpredictable as well. He, unlike Kaepernick, he didn't rely on the run. The run was his, he resorted to the run if he had to. Kaepernick kind of exploited his ability to run. So I think Russell Wilson will be a little bit better off in the pocket and getting rid of the ball smartly, whereas Kaepernick, I think, is gonna have a harder time with that.
Just thinking, something just hit me. We've got the 49ers, the Rams, and the Seahawks all lost their number one receivers. The Rams lost their receiver, Danny Amendola, to the Patriots in the offseason. You've got Percy Harvin down for the Seahawks, and you've got Crabtree down for the 49ers. The only team that's got a legit number one is the Cardinals with Larry Fitzgerald.
He looks like Jerry Rice out there.
How do you think that'll help the Cardinals going forward in this division?
I think it's being able to spread the ball out. Obviously, Fitzgerald is a Jerry Rice, very Jerry Rice-esque. I would agree 100% on that. But as far as all over the place, you got San Fran, you got Vernon Davis, who he catches way too many balls downfield. For some reason, people can't figure that out. He's a wide receiver. He's a beast. He catches the long ball really well, but he catches the short ball too. So San Fran's got plenty of weapons to throw to, and again, Russell Wilson, he'll find a way.
Well, I agree though, but I'm going with the 49ers on this one. I think the addition of Anquan Bolden is going to make the difference, and quite frankly, Harbaugh ought to be arrested for stealing, for getting Bolden for a 6th-round pick from the Ravens. You got to think they'd want that one back, especially after Pitta goes down and losing so many starters. You got to think they'd want a little bit more for Bolden at this point.
Yeah, I've always loved Bolden, and I've said it. As soon as I found out they got Bolden, I always said Bolden was the guy. San Fran is the only guy that San Fran needed to win the Super Bowl last year. He was the only guy. He was the key factor in San Fran not winning the Super Bowl last year. So now they have him, and I think it's I have San Fran as a wild card, and I think they're perfectly capable to win the division, and they're perfectly capable to go to the Super Bowl. But I just have them as a wild card this time.
Well, I've got San Fran winning division, and I've got the Seahawks missing out. You think Kaepernick's going to have the sophomore slump? I think it's going to happen to the Seahawks quarterback up there in the Northwest. But I do want to mention one thing. Carson Palmer, for all you fantasy gurus out there, look out for him this year. Last year with the Raiders and their deficit of talent, he still managed to throw over 4,000 yards and 22 touchdowns. Now he's throwing to Larry Fitzgerald, and they've got a pretty aggressive defense down there. I'd expect him to increase his touchdown total probably about 4 or 5 touchdowns this year, given the increase in talent. And with a defense that's going to give him more chances, I'd look for him as a fantasy sleeper in those leagues. And moving right along, let's go to the NFC North. And this might just be the toughest division in football. You've got 2 teams coming off the playoffs in the Packers and Vikings. You've got a team loaded with talent like the Detroit Lions, who've just been making a lot of mental mistakes. And then you've got the Chicago Bears, who just a few years ago, well, not more than a few years ago, but made the Super Bowl. That defense is still largely intact, and they just keep adding talent to that offensive side. How is this mess going to play out?
Well, this is just it. It's a mess. As you said, I'm Wisconsin and Illinois. Packers, my second favorite team. Strange, I know. Bears still being my first. This one's tricky. Minnesota, I don't really want to include them in that mix just because they're so one-sided. Peterson, you told me before, Peterson vowed he was going to get 2,500 yards this season. And with the caliber of the NFL teams these days, they shouldn't let that happen. There's no reason they should let that happen. And if they could figure out a way to keep Peterson out of the end zone, that's Minnesota's only hope, really. And as far as the Packers and the Bears, they're suffering from a lot of the same problems. Their offensive lines suck. Rodgers, I love the man to death. He has one of the best completion percentages of all time, and he's the highest sack quarterback last year. That's it might come to the same thing this year, but unfortunately, the Bears don't have that. They have Cutler, who I think is still a very capable quarterback, but he doesn't have the ability to absorb the hit and still make the play at the same time. So if either team can figure out how to get their line to, or at least get their quarterbacks out of harm's way, that's the team that's going to win the division. I have the Packers winning the division as of right now, but I don't know this new coach that the Bears have. I don't know how the team's going to respond to him, and I don't know if they're going to be able to keep Cutler out of harm's way. If they do that really well and Cutler drops his sacks incredibly, then I think the Bears are going to definitely make that run for the division.
We're talking about offensive line play and some interesting things. We mentioned that Aaron Rodgers was the most sacked quarterback last year. He's also the most sacked quarterback over the past 4 years, and it's not even close, despite the horrendous lines in Arizona and Chicago and other places in the league. And in addition to that, in training camp, they lost their best offensive lineman, Brian Beluga, at left tackle, which, when you expose that blind side, and Aaron Rodgers has had a problem with concussions, that could play a huge factor going down.
Big time.
On the flip side, you've got the Bears, who have really bolstered that line. They got Jermon Bushrod from the Saints to play left tackle, former Pro Bowler, and they drafted Kyle Long out of Oregon in the first round to play right guard, and he's looked good this preseason. 2 games, only 1 pressure, no sacks, no hurries. I mean, how do you see the Bears starting line going forward?
It's showing promise. I will give it that. But it's not just the line doing better. It's using Cutler to his strengths. Cutler was always very good at throwing on the run. He was always very good at rolling out, and that's one thing that under Lovey they never let him do enough, especially when he was getting hit. Now, if these 2 additions to the line hold up, and he can throw from the pocket more without being rushed too much, yeah, obviously that's going to be huge. But I can't rely on 2 guys doing their job 100% of the time. And let's face it, Cutler does get annoyed, and I think that does affect his ability. If he's getting hit too much, he will get bothered by that. But I like Long. I think he's going to do a lot better than everyone thinks because they knock him because of his size. And while this is a fast game nowadays, this is all about speed and your ability, and he seems to have exactly what they need.
Well, I'm with you. I think when you've got the best player in the NFL on your team like the Packers do, I think you're almost always going to go to the playoffs. And Aaron Rodgers, for my money, is the best player in the NFL. And he's no stranger to a shoddy line and poor blocking. So I think he'll be able to do it. And he's just got so many weapons on that team. And they drafted that Eddie Lacy in the first round at running back. So now they're going to have even another threat for him to play with. I think the Bears will make a wild card, but one team that's really got me worried is the Lions.
Yes.
Their problem has always been mental mistakes. It's never been talent. They are a very talented team. And then this offseason, they've added high-quality players, guys like an Israel Adonijah, a Reggie Bush, and then they drafted out of BYU Ziggy Ansah, a graduate and squeaky clean. So they seem to be trying to change this image. How do you think, if they can eliminate the mental mistakes, where do you think they're going to end up?
That's just it. I don't think they're going to eliminate those mental mistakes. The Lions have always been a force. They got great players. Their running backs, they don't need to run them like most teams do. They're offensive weapons to pass to, and that's how they've utilized them. I think both their first 2 running backs had some obscene amount of catches last year. Both of them did, and that's fine. If you don't want to run, you don't have to run. I mean, there's been plenty of teams in the past that don't have a running game and just pass a lot. And my biggest beef is I don't think they could hold it together for an entire season. I think they're always going to have that air of mentality there that's just not going to work. I hope for the best. They're a team that I also don't have a problem with, even though they're against my Bears and my Packers. But they're a team that I would like to see do well. And if they do get rid of those mental mistakes, then yeah, we're all in trouble.
Yeah, the thing with the Lions is, as we've been harping on, is those mental mistakes, and it's just so hard to overcome those, especially when you guys got guys like Ndamukong Suh, who is so aggressive and such a hothead that you kind of have to temper that. But whatever they do, if I'm the Packers or Bears, I'm investing in smelling salts because, I mean, they are bound and determined in Detroit to kill opposing quarterbacks. You look at that line. You've got a veteran like a Kyle Vanden Bosch. They just signed Israel Adonijah. You've got 2 first-rounders in Ndamukong Suh and then Nick Fairley from Auburn. It's just going to be brutal for opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah. What it is what it is.
Yeah.
But the only thing I'm not concerned about is the Vikings. I think they're going back to the cellar. As great as Adrian Peterson is, I think last year wasn't so much of a fluke for him, but as a team.
Yes.
In this league, it's very hard to run for 2,000 yards, especially when they know you're going to run it.
Mm-hmm.
And with the loss of Percy Harvin and Christian Ponder at quarterback, who I'm not sold on at all,
Nope.
Greg Jennings is not going to replace Percy Harvin. He's a nice complementary receiver, but at this stage in his career, he's no longer a number 1, and it is not enough to take the pressure off of AP.
No. Like I said, the caliber of defenses these days, if they can't acclimate to Peterson getting that ball and keeping him out of that 2,500-yard range, then they got some serious issues to work through. But you know what? You can't count Adrian Peterson out. If he finds a way into that end zone, then that is the Vikings shot. But a one-sided team, I can't put my money on it at all.
Let's skip down to the NFC South. This is another interesting division where you've got the Atlanta Falcons, who've had a stranglehold on this division ever since they drafted Matty Ice. But you've also got the Saints, who are getting Sean Payton back, and they got Rex Ryan as a defensive coordinator. Or, I'm sorry, Rob Ryan. Rex Ryan's with the Jets. Rob Ryan's the new defensive coordinator with the Saints. And then you've got a team like the Panthers with Cam Newton, who's putting up some of the most incredible stats ever seen, but he's not getting the wins. Mm-hmm. And then you've got that finicky team down in Tampa, where they've got loads of talent. They've got a young quarterback who can air it out with the best of them. But again, the wins just haven't been piling up down there. I've got the Falcons in this one. I just think they're too talented, and with the addition of Osi Umenyiora is an upgrade over John Abraham, who they lost. As good as the Saints are, and as good as the other teams are bound to be, I don't see them relinquishing that hold, especially with a home field advantage like the Atlanta Dome. Mm-hmm. How about you? What do you see coming out of it?
I will cop out and agree with you on the Falcons winning that one. They're another Super Bowl contender for me as well. I'm not picking them for the Super Bowl this year just because I want to be bold. But they're fantastic. They're hard to stop. Their defense is solid, and yes, you got Drew Brees, who could very easily throw for 6,000 yards. You never know. But the guy, the Saints are going to be tough. They're very, very tough. They always are tough. Getting Peyton back, he does great things with them, and they would be a wild card pick for me as well. But I have to cop out, go for my Bears on the other wild card pick for me. But the Saints are tough. They're scary. Drew Brees is just too fantastic, but I have the Falcons winning it, hands down. Bucks are fun, but they do have some issues. They for some reason they just can't keep it together to get that win. A lot of weapons though, and they're sleepers. They're one of those teams that are just going to climb on you, and you won't even know they're there. Kind of like what San Fran did. They built their team over how many years? You never even knew they were there. Then all of a sudden, bam, they're winning every game.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is another division that is stacked with receivers. So, I mean, if you're in a fantasy draft, probably 10 of the first 15 receivers could come from this division. You've got guys like Steve Smith in Carolina, Vincent Jackson in Tampa. You've got Marcus Coulson and Lance Moore in New Orleans. And then, God, the weapons in Atlanta. In addition to Julio Jones and Roddy White, you got Tony Gonzalez and the newly acquired Steven Jackson. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a fantasy goldmine in the NFC South.
Yes.
And while these defenses, some of them are pretty good, none of them are elite to shut down these guys. So putting up big numbers this year. Who, out of those receivers that we just mentioned, who do you think is going to have the biggest year?
Oh, goodness. I had Colston for fantasy one year. And even though he put up good numbers, fantasy-wise, wasn't as good because he'd have one game where he'd get a ton of yards and then another game where he'd catch one pass. And over the course of his season, it looks great. Fantasy-wise, not too great.